Hi, and welcome to At-Home Art Lessons with the Art Groupies. We're going to have fun today with this art groupie, Stretch, where he loves to experiment and play and take risks, do things that he's never done before. So we're going to create a composition today. And our composition is going to be with a bird, maybe two, some bark and some leaves. We're going to create a collage with some painted paper. I like to create collages with paper that I have played and painted and created some cool textures and use it for a collage. So simply putting a piece of string on a spoon with some tape, or maybe taking a piece of string and attaching it to a clothesline pin, moving that around after you dunk it in some colored paint will create a very unique texture that you can't get from painting or from coloring. So I dipped my string in one color. I'll then take it, and to help dip so I don't make such a mess, I can use a paintbrush to help dip that string in. I'm going to use a nice brown, and I'm going to move that string around again. So you want to use multiple colors, and this can be done with any color. I'm simply using some neutral colors because this is going to be used for the bark of my tree. So I'm going to now dip it in some gray. Nice variety of colors will create a nice value of different shades and tints of colors. And I'm just moving that string along, and it pulls some other colors in there and creates colors that I just normally wouldn't do. And it's a nice way to not just throw the paint away, but to use it and to have fun using it. Not making too much of a mess. Put this in some black. That final dark color. And again, this is just with simple string and yarn. You could hold it with your fingers. I like to just hold it with a paper clip or a clothesline clip. Just makes it a little bit more easier to move it around. So this is for my bark. I'm going to set that aside because it needs to dry before I can start cutting into it and using it for my collage. My next piece, I'm going to use a simple straw, and I'm going to stick it in some paint that I watered down, and I'm going to put the straw all the way into the paint, and I'm going to put my finger over the other end of the straw, and then I'm going to let it go and put a nice pile of paint around my paper. I'm going to try to use some different colors, some blues, some yellows, some dark green, some light green. After I've put some puddles around the paper, I'm then going to keep the end of the straw close to the paint and just blow. Now this painted paper is going to be used to create the leaves for our collage. And again, just making some really cool textures that we normally wouldn't make. I want to try to fill in all that white with some beautiful texture. And it's also just fun to play. So again, the greens and the blues and the yellows, this is going to be for my leaves. My next piece of paper is going to be for the birds. And I'm going to use marbles, and I'm going to use some warm colors for this one. So I took some marbles and I dipped them in my paint, and I can just put them right on the paper. I'm using a box lid to contain all this so I don't make too much of a mess. Putting all these marbles, and put some more blops of color down to make sure I get some color all over the paper. I'm also going to use some bigger balls, some golf balls perhaps, to help those smaller balls move around, because sometimes they get stuck in the paint if you put a little bit too much paint and not enough water. So I'm just simply going to grab the edges of my box and just move those marbles around and create a really neat painted piece of paper without making too much of a mess. Again, just a nice fun way to create textured paper that you can use for your art. And you get to use that extra paint so you're not throwing it away. So we're experimenting and playing with our art groupie Stretch. So again, I'm going to set that aside and let that dry. Now, after it's dry, you want to think about maybe creating some templates, some different pieces of paper that you can lay on top of that painted paper to make some nice shapes. I went ahead and did that for my bird. I made my tails a little bit fatter than the ones here. I did a body and a head, and I did a variety of tails. I thought maybe I could create more than one bird. I also made some wings with the simple teardrop shape. I also went ahead and when my paper was dry for my leaves, I cut out some simple shapes that kind of resemble a leaf. And then I also cut out, using those neutral colors that I first painted, cut out some strips for some tree branches or some bark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a colored background, this pretty purple piece, and I'm going to lay down some of my strips of paper for those branches. You don't have to be too worried about them going across the paper. We're just trying to create something that resembles a tree. And it can go off the paper and you can cut that off later. You can also cut off some skinnier pieces for the stems of the leaves as to where they're going to be coming out and off of the tree branch. So you want to have a neat composition. It makes for a nicer picture. Make sure things are all around your paper. After you lay them out, you might have to move them, and that's okay. You just want to get some idea as to where you're going to lay this stuff out and how it's going to look. So I laid out my branches. I'm now going to think about where I'm going to put my birds. So I'm going to maybe have this bird's body here. Maybe he's looking behind him. Cut out some nice triangles for some beaks, boogly woogly eyes. Can think about another place to put my other bird. Maybe I can use this space over here. Maybe he's looking in the same direction. Maybe I'll have him down a little lower. I'm going to have both of his wings kind of together. Put this guy's wing like he's about ready to take off. Maybe add this tail feather down here. Why not? Maybe I'll move this over so it doesn't cover up those pretty leaves I made. Another little eye. So when you overlap things, kind of makes for a more natural picture there. cut out some circles. Maybe I can add some cherries. Maybe this could be like a little cherry tree for more color to pop. So after get done playing with all that and deciding where I'm going to put things, I'd then finally use my glue to glue it down. And this is what we would call a collage using painted paper. So I hope you have fun. Thanks for joining me, and have an excellent time painting some paper.